Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the special podcast of Institute for Strategic Studies, Research and Analysis, ISSRA. And today we have with us Maria Sultan. She's the director of SASI. Welcome to the podcast, Maria. Thank you very much for taking out your time and being here. Maria, I was just wondering that since you have studied so much, I just went through your profile. And interestingly, if somebody is so keen to study that much, they end up becoming doctors. Though you are a doctor, but you're not an MBBS doctor.
They say there's no peace for the sinners. I thought I have got a far more difficult job, and that is fixing social issues and social problems and providing solutions. So I think that doctor is just as valid. Nonetheless, I think they give you a PhD because you contribute something new to the body of knowledge. And hopefully, I would tend to believe that whatever we are trying to present at the South Asian Strategic Stability Institute University, which I head, is also to come up with new knowledge so that our people can have some better solutions. So knowledge it is, and finding solutions it is. And just for the record, I hope you know this thing, that the doctors actually get their acronym because it was believed that once they were doing their surgeries, they were actually contributing something new to the body of knowledge. That is why they stole the name doctors from the PhDs who actually contributed.
Oh, that's a good one, huh? But anyway, let's talk about your childhood. I mean, your schooling and your college days and all. Let's throw light on that aspect.
Well, I've studied at a junior model school in Multan, and then Zainabia Foundation High School. And then I have been pretty much in Islamabadi. So I was in F72 College, and I've graduated from there, then from Quaid-e-Azam, then from Bradford, then from Oxford, and then in different places around the world. And then in Uppsala University, and also different places in the world. So, the story goes on and on and on.
So how true is it that the study life of a doctor never ends?
It's true. Trust me. You wake up and you haven't studied for 2 weeks or 1 week, and you feel as if you're totally out of knowledge, out of sync. And as you know it very well, you're in international relations and contemporary affairs. Mm-hmm. You can wake up with one government, and in the morning, it's going to be a brand new world. And it's not just a brand new world in one part of the world. It can be a brand new world in any parts of the world. So you can have global tectonic shifts. You can have, national changes. You can have military confrontations, war in Ukraine, things, how the hostilities broke out in Gaza is another example. So I think you have to be on your toes. And you do realize that you don't know everything about everything, but what you do understand is that you're able to learn and read the tectonic shifts that may emerge on the scene. So that's what you do, and I think the subject keeps you alive, it keeps you forward-looking, and it keeps you constantly abridged with whatever is happening. And since I work on defense, therefore, there's lots of things which are happening in the defense world. There are conflicts, there are wars, there are technologies, there are weapons, there are military doctrines, there are projections. It's use of politics through other means. So it's fascinating. And now, interestingly, we have come into an era of fifth generation warfare, which we understand and very commonly used in Pakistan. And we were one of the few people who actually initiated, one of the pioneers to initiate it in National Defense University as well.
The non-kinetic warfare.
Non-kinetic warfare. Mm-hmm. So this basically means it brings you to all things which are new, all things which are different, all things which come into statecraft. And the idea to get your head around that today military power will be used to optimize against statecraft, look at your vulnerabilities and use it against you. And the idea that it was going to be done as a coherent whole, I think that is something new and it's different, and such concentrated effort we have not witnessed before. And it has led to some good examples and some not so good examples. But nonetheless, it is a reality which we're dealing with. So every day is a challenge, and every day you feel that the knowledge you have is old. So you need to study.
Things are changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
Things are moving in such a fast pace. I mean, it's unbelievable now, especially, during the last 30 years, especially once we got to know about this internet phenomena. And the digital world is now, it's totally transforming everything. It has totally taken over our minds. Look at the artificial intelligence. I mean, we think, what, interestingly, I was reading an article and then I Googled it and I got, in fact, a very good portion of an interview of Elon Musk. And he was saying that the AirPods now they will be doing something with your brain and the waves and everything. So if you have those AirPods, so eventually you'll end up, you know, getting to receive all that information that is actually present in your mind. So this is where we are moving.
Actually, Faisal, I think you've hit hit it just where the nerve is. I think we are in an era where technological transformations are bringing it back to what, from day one, the battle is about good and evil. It's about the human mind, and it's about the human heart.
Perceptions.
So, perceptions, reality, controlling mind through knowledge. Earlier, it was the dark arts. Now we have generative technologies. Now we have generative AI. We have possibilities where data is manipulated. We have ideas. What you and I are talking at this moment, it may be generated by another AI, which with very different.
Alexa
version.
Knows everything. What's going on?
I think Alexa is old, and Alexa doesn't know. I think we have new kind of nano robots. We have small flies on your table, which could be monitoring everything. If you were using your iPhone,
those nano drones you're talking about?
Yes, I'm talking about those nano drones. If these iPhones which you're talking about, if you don't go to Facebook and you do not disable certain services, then they listen into your voice. And it is recommended by anybody who is
So we have become a product.
No, not only are you a product, you are a lab rat. Because you're all, you've been experimented on. You will see that if you say a certain thing and they hear into your voice, because they're constantly recording your voice as you have a phone next to you. And after some time, they come up with personalized ads for you. And there's an option. So you can go there and you can close this option if you're a little bit more literate on this issue. But if you're not literate on that issue, for a normal person, his phone is actually a device for him to become a lab rat. And that lab rat is going to be done not just in terms of your, clothing preferences, but also in terms of your political ideas, in terms of your social ideas, in terms of what you believe is freedom. So everything what you believe today can be challenged. Everything which you understand is a social construct. In what we call as social scientists, the makings of your historical, cultural evolution is going to become questionable. And it's questionable not because you wanted it to become questionable. It's because someone else is doing that work for you. People like us, people who are knowledge makers, people who are in this business of understanding the structure, who are in the business of deconstructing all of this. They can construct and deconstruct, and then also they create and shape. And that's why you have revolutions.
No, something very interesting. So you talked about the revolutions. There was this Western author. He wrote an article in the early 90s, I believe. His name was Huntington. And, he talked.
We know the guy.
Yeah. You know the guy, huh?
Yeah, we know the guy.
So the interesting aspect is that he talked about something very interesting. He said, well, there was a time when, we used to talk about the ideological differences and, the wars and the clashes took place because of that. And then there was this economic aspect that, you need to take over another country and just get everything out of it. But then he also spoke about something very interesting, and that was about the culture. The next conflict is about the culture. And then, a lot of debate carried on, and eventually this clash of civilizations, this phenomena erupted. Now, whether you talk about Hindus or you talk about Confucius or you talk about Japanese, Muslims, Africans, Latins, or the Westerns for that matter, so many different civilizations. Now, the interesting part is that do you think that this current model that we see, because it's so rapidly changing these days, is all about these civilizations? Is that the actual story behind whatever we see today, or is it about something else?
I think you have asked a very important question, and I'm going to give you a social scientist answer, taking liberty from you. What is it that every culture is based on?
Some values, ethics, norms,
something good.
Language, food.
It is your idea of good and bad. One.
Okay.
Every culture has a good and bad idea. Something is good in one culture, other one is
not accepted. Yeah.
Second is your idea of happiness. And third is you being in sync with your humanity. What is it that they're doing? You could sit with someone, you do something good for someone,
okay,
you feel happy about it. You take care of a child who's dependent on you, incapable of his own defense, you take care of them, you feel good. You take care of a class which is being repressed and you speak for their rights, you feel good. Now, these are very small, innate human elements
All right.
of what you feel, genuine human emotion with. And you feel and you describe them as happiness, as good and bad. And culturally, they vary. But their baseline, no matter what culture you pick up, is always the same. It's drawing its strength from human emotion, human balance, and justice. That if someone has done wrong, you will correct that. If someone has done something extraordinarily difficult and you think that he needs to be applauded, you applaud him. So you celebrate your heroes and you disregard those who disregard you. This is what every culture speaks for. Now, this is being changed away from this concept of what you call and what we see today as global governance. So global idea of democracy, global idea of happiness. If you have two TVs...
That particular idea cannot fit in everywhere.
No, but this is where the war is. So the war is not about cultures. The war is about the debates, the way the social scientist debates are. Like, for example, in terrorism, they say people become terrorists because they're poor. Really. Half of the world is poor, half of the world lives below poverty line, but everybody does not turns into a criminal, does not turns into a terrorist.
Maybe 0.01%, yes, but so this, not in general.
Yeah. So this basically means that there is no automatic transition. It could be a contributing factor, but it cannot be the defining factor.
Absolutely.
Right? So what is happening is that there is culturally modifying and taking away things which do not represent that idea. Secondly, economic progress. Economic progress for what? Okay, look at the
prosperity of the people.
Okay, look at the West. What has happened to the countries which were given absolute economic prosperity? Japan. They're supposed to have the highest GDP level. They are supposed to be technologically advanced, civilized, whatever you call, best of the best. And what is their population rate? -4? -2? They have robots working for them. They don't know where to bury their dead.
They're marrying robots.
They don't know what to do. They have to bury their dead. People have funeral services while they're alive.
I'm forgetting the name of that prime minister who used to spend a lot of money on his hair. He was the prime minister, Shinzo Abe, Joishoro or something like that.
True.
I mean, once he appeared with a robot as a first lady.
Yes. So the question is that what you have done, you've taken away the basic humanity from people and telling them that this is the site and this is your social order and this is progress. This is not progress. Progress has to be dated and understood in human emotion into the cultural context in which you emerge. You cannot take people away and replace them with technology and replace them with consumerism and say that this is your epitome of success. And if this is the epitome of success, then of course it works in a different way. Now, why is this being done? Because there is a population slump. Now, the population slump is in Europe. It is why you
Germany.
It's everywhere. So
in China, they had to change their one-child policy to two-child and now three-child. Yeah.
And you're having that in East Asia. You have it in Australia. You have it in Japan. You have it in all of these countries, which were supposed to be the tier 1 countries. Now, these tier 1 countries had economic progress because they brought the population rate down, they increased industrialization, they spent all over, they created a global system, and economic progress meant economic power for some of the world elite. Now that came at the expense of the people.
Look at the social spending now. They have to spend on the older people.
So this is so what they're doing is that social, cultural, that thing which you started, which you asked, what they're doing with it, that social construct is being created. So when you say the strategic culture is being affected, the strategic culture is being affected because your basic belief system is being challenged, and you're being told that if you can be on this, value-added platform, then you are a successful individual. If you're not, then you are not actually enjoying happiness. So people are going into depression. More and more youth has gone towards drugs. Why? They are not children from all poor classes. We did a study at our center and we found out that most of the affluent kids actually studying in affluent schools,
very important point.
They were the ones who were actually most affected by drugs, around 50 to 60%, girls and boys. And what was the reason? It was the peer pressure. The reason was that the schools were creating an enabling environment where they had to represent and emulate a structure, a culture, which did not allow them to reconcile with the cultural settings in which they were living. Because you came home, your mother would say, okay, beta, say your prayers. And you go there and the school says, no, you need to go and attend this social evening where there's going to be, a concert and this is going to happen. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. There's going to be a fashion walk. And the children were under constant peer pressure. And in order to be socially acceptable,
And this is going to multiply in the future as well.
This is what has happened. Now, what has happened? That is also a cultural, I would say, a cultural war, because you have brought a cultural understanding of something which happened in another school system, another educational system, and trying to impose into another cultural setting. And who are the affectees? The affectees are your generations. Now, these kids who have done their O levels, A levels, where do they end up? They don't end up in your schools. They waste a year here. They have to go abroad. So you are creating a feeder crop.
And how many will go abroad? That's the question.
No, even if they go abroad, then they're dealing with those societies going under transition. So when they go abroad, then they come back. So you are creating these cultural misfits.
Exactly.
So yes, unfortunately, it does boil down to culture, but at the heart of it, it's not the cultural war at the transitional point or as a starting point. It's actually the economics and the power, which is the tectonic shift on, or the tectonic plate on which this cultural war is, I would say, stationed, presented, manipulated, and unfortunately, at the end of the day, all social changes will be human. So if you have got more population, you will call the shots.
Now, interestingly, since you just spoke about this power and authority, this is what we see these days. One country is United States of America, absolute power, absolute authority, the Western mindset. They create the narratives, they set the perceptions, whether right or wrong. They are controlling the media through films, through dramas, through media houses, through everything.
Your social
cartoons,
even your social understanding.
Absolutely. So don't you think that is also creating a confusion, because a Western world, it's a different world as compared to the Asian society, for that matter? Because we used to always hear that this 21st century is going to be the century of Asia. Is it going to be the century of Asia?
It will be the century of it. It will always.
Quarter of this century is already passed.
It doesn't matter, because you see, the century is, the major thing is that transition is underway. Did you ever think a country, a region which based itself in unity, such as the European Union, would have nationalists coming out?
7 or 8 countries have the extreme right now. And
from
like
the north,
Italy, Sweden, Finland, Croatia.
From north to the south, Switzerland. I've been going to Vienna, every year, alternatively because of the nuclear issues, and it's uncanny. You don't feel safe. You don't feel safe despite the fact, because you do not know, somebody is just not going to like the color of your skin. And you're there for a few days, but in their idea, you're there to take their resources. So they do not see the economic benefit, which you're
as a parasite.
They don't look at your economic benefit. They don't look at all of that, because they have been socially conditioned to believe that it's not their government's fault that they're in this position. It is not their social system which allowed them not to marry, not to have children, not to do all of that, that it is because of the others. So this concept of the evil empire, and this is the order which we've lived in, whether we like it or we don't like it.
Is it the future?
I think it is the future. And unfortunately...
Because there is a very clear-cut shift now.
Unfortunately, as we've moved towards integration, now we're going to move towards protectionism. And this basically means whoever will have more population, they are the people who are going to move. Because at the end of the day, the world of economics moves on resources. Free movement of labor, free movement of trade, free movement of resources. It's the natural order of things. So if you want economic progress, you need to have all 3 freedoms. And if you want to give all these 3 freedoms, then those people for whom you wanted to project those freedoms, they cannot remain in a position of authority.
But let's suppose if I tell you to close your eyes, and once you open your eyes, this is 2050. What are you going to see?
I think what we're going to see before that is going to be a major war between China and United States, that's for sure, because this transition is not going to happen smoothly, no matter what each side believes.
They have engaged the Russians in Ukraine, so do you think they'll engage China in Taiwan?
I think there is going to be a war over Taiwan. And the reason...
A direct conflict between China and America, or an indirect one? Okay,
if you look at the history of empires, no empire has come down without a fight. And no empire has risen without a fight. So a point does come where there is a transition, and that transition is usually violent.
So whatever Americans are doing at the moment, whether you talk about the Ukraine issue, the way they are supporting them, God knows where that money is going. But, now we have heard that, the Ukrainian forces, they are making a lot of advance.
You see, what the Americans have done is brilliant for America.
Sitting there,
No,
quiet.
sitting there, they have changed the course of history for Europe. First, there was a Euro-Asian empire. There was a Euro-Asian trade. There was Belt and Road Initiative actually going to, the success of the Belt and Road Initiative was where? The success of the Belt, it was going to Europe, it was going to Rotterdam, it was going to Finland, it was going to Berlin, it was going to...
Everywhere.
It was going to France. It was going to...
It was supposed to branch out into Europe.
From the east to the west. So it was Euro-Asian, and they wanted to capitalize on the shortest maritime trade along with land routes.
Correct.
So 45 countries of, post-NATO countries of the EU, and this was going to include 91 countries. So they wanted to bring the eastern countries with the western countries and actually capitalize on the land route. So it was like the Marshall Plan of a bigger order. Now, what the United States has managed to do...
Do you think they'll be able to survive after that?
No, what the United States has done...
Don't you think, China and America getting into a conflict means that this would lead to a nuclear conflict?
I think...
And that means that within 1 hour, the entire globe is going to suffer.
I think it won't happen. It won't happen.
Maybe 5 billion people will die.
No, I don't think 5 billion people would die. But one thing is for sure, it's not going to be so seamless. Because you see, already the allies which are very close to the United States are in harm's way right now. There is a war in Ukraine. A war in Ukraine means a war in Europe. Second, the Ukrainians are radicals. You've got what you call these right-wing radicals which have come there and fought the Ukrainian side as well. So you have subcontractors which are fighting there as well. So what we saw as, right-wing terror groups with us, they are going to witness something similar in Ukraine, which will also going to draw their strength from religious order. So what's going to happen? What we are going to look at is going to be a re-radicalization of Europe. We are looking at nationalism.
That has already started.
Yeah. We're looking at nationalism on one end. Then we are going to look at extreme religious rightism, which is going to come also in Europe. And then
Orthodox Christians you're talking about?
Yes, Orthodox Christians.
Versus the rest of the
Catholics,
religions.
the Protestants, because these are the different groups which are working in Ukraine, which are being funded. So if you fund them, you militarize them, and you ask them to go fight a modern war, what do you expect? They're going to demodernize themselves. They're going to become less powerful. These are going to be children of war. And what have we learned from Afghanistan? Children of war are always children of war till you can come up with an alternative for them. And the world is not ready to get that alternative, because right now they are so caught up in what they believe is democracy and human rights and everything. And the fallacy of the argument is falling short. What is the fallacy? The fallacy is witnessed in Palestine. The fallacy is witnessed in Kashmir. The fallacy is witnessed in any other part of the world which does not fall right in the agenda of the global powers.
There's another question. Now, remember during the Soviet Union days, this Cold War phenomena was at its peak, and eventually, there was no more Soviet Union. And eventually what we witnessed was Russia and so many other countries getting independence. Now, looking at that phenomena and looking at what is happening in China, obviously the Tibet issue is there, the Taiwan issue is there. But you know what? The Chinese are very silent and very quiet, and they're working, day and night to make sure that their economic strength becomes the real strength. And that has become. And look at the current scenario. BRICS is no more the Brazil, Russia, and India and South Africa and China. It's much larger. SCO. And at the same time, what we have seen, AUKUS, Quad, so many, like little NATOs in this region. This is something to worry about. Now, so many countries are dependent on each other. Yet, do you think they can afford to have that kind of a conflict?
It's the ultimate power struggle. And when big powers struggle, then there are world theaters everywhere. That's the reality. We saw that in the former Soviet Union, but at that time it was a balanced relationship. So there were very clear lines. The clear lines were stability and stability. That the relationship between Russia and United States would be stable, but there will be wars in different places. So that we saw a Cold War, and the world lived with that. What we're dealing at this moment is a transition. United States and China are like co-joined Siamese twins.
Mm-hmm.
They hate each other, they love each other, but they're joined to the hip.
Look at the bilateral trade. That is
Bilateral trade,
highest
bilateral
level of
economics, bilateral imports, the investment in each other's system, the amount of China experts, the amount of America experts. You don't find them anywhere else in the world except China and United States. And then what's also interesting is the regions they're fighting over. Europe is gone. So for China to reclaim Europe, it's going to be one hell of a strife and one hell of a different direction, because the war in Ukraine has upset that. Now, what has that been replaced with? That has been replaced with
Middle East.
Thank you.
Africa.
It has been replaced with a war in Africa. So this basically means, and that war in Africa is actually happening where? In the Middle East. So the Middle Eastern war, which is happening in Palestine, is a Russia-China war on the United States. So this basically means now the sphere of influence, which is traditionally always considered to be US, such as Saudi Arabia, such as Iran, Iraq, you can look at the positions in time and when they were there on the same side, now are very clearly divided. The region doesn't know where it needs to go. The region is trying to find a balance. First, they had I2, U2. They tried to go with Israel. That did not fall through. After the war in Palestine, everything is standing still. So what they lost in Ukraine, they have gained in Middle East. Now, this basically leaves us in the middle of the hurricane. That means South Asia, because you are now the only population center which is going to determine the future of the world industrial base. Who's going to make these cheap products at 30 cents? Because now the Chinese labor rate is around $600. So this basically means some industry needs to move forward.
India?
So India already is capitalized by the United States. There have been 60 plus agreements which have been signed. There's BICA, Kamkasa, STA1, you name it.
Yeah.
So they're technically going to become, Make in India is going to become the US industry's shift base forward. It's going to be a forward.
So that is really going to strengthen India. But do you think that if America engages through kinetic means, engages China, by the way, that's what I'm talking about, and the Indians could have some sort of an advantage.
Indians have lost.
Come after us.
Indians have lost the plot by underestimating the Americans.
Don't we underestimate the Indians? Let's be honest.
No, we don't underestimate the Indians. We are constantly obsessed by India. So you see, we would have been underestimated. We would underestimate them if we didn't understand our obsession with them. We're obsessed. So we look at every minute movement they make. We look at the impact just
look
before.
At the statistics and they are mind-boggling.
Yes, but the problem
we are dying to, enroll $3-4 billion, and they have got $750 billion.
You see, the thing is, they have $750 billion. Let's not look at the effects in which world economy is moving. Look at Bangladesh. Bangladesh was doing much better than us. It was IMF, World Bank's economic forums, prized baby. You see, India is not recognizing the right-wing parties which are emerging. So that's going to have a consequence in terms of their actual economic progress, which is going to trickle down for India. Americans will benefit from it. Others will benefit from it. What would be the net benefit to the larger India is going to be a question mark. Now, coming to us, coming to us on Afghanistan, you are right. We were very positive about it, but had we gone forward and actually established a moat, China is doing business with Afghanistan. United States is doing business with Afghanistan. Russia is doing business with Afghanistan.
India's back in business in Afghanistan. Do you believe? Okay, last quick comment on this very important question. The northmost division of Bangladesh, Rangpur, something like that, right? I'm forgetting the name. So, one of the Indian analysts, they were talking about taking that particular part of Bangladesh, through hostile means, so that chicken neck issue is no more there.
Yes.
So you never know.
Do you know why they were saying that? Do you really think so? They're concerned about the chicken neck?
They are actually.
No. There's a lot to do with the economics. It's got a lot to do with the minerals. It's got a lot to do with the starting of the Brahmaputra River. So it's got to do with a lot of economic mineral resources, and also for the fact that in Chittagong Hills, most of the migration which happens in Northeast India, in Assam and others, is actually coming from there. So they believe that by doing this, they could physically secure an area,
and
because
this could be a very important strategic move. You never know.
And if it happens, then the question becomes whether this is going to become the new norm. And if it becomes the new norm,
do you think that could trigger a war between China and India on that particular part? Because
no,
I'm talking about the Sikkim area and all.
No, it is that area, but Sikkim joined
India in 75, if I'm not wrong.
Well, they annexed Sikkim. They
Yeah.
never joined. So the issue of Sikkim is a little further away.
Annexation is a good word, actually.
Well, they did that. And they did it by using the presidential powers of Article 1 and 2 of
Like
Indian
Crimea was
Constitution.
the next, remember? But anyway,
But
Maria,
they
I wish we had
rationalized.
more time.
Yes,
Could have
I agree
talked,
with you.
but thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And that's all we have for this particular session. I'll see you again. Till then, you take good care of yourself.